What is your opinion about? I wish they took the acting and story setup more seriously. I'm more stimulated by the situation than I am by just watching two people have, so I appreciate it when there's an attempt to make the situation seriously. I wish more movies were made more like Hollywood movies. The old movies were like that. They were mostly shot to be viewed in theaters, not at home. There was a sense that they needed to have plots like other movies. Of course, many of the plots and contexts of those movies were laughable, though, so that could backfire. But in the days when it was hard to get, people didn't care as much. If you want to find those kind of movies, try searching on Vintage. Not into videos, but I occasionally like to read erotica. The visuals in my head are always more appealing than what actually looks like. I would argue that erotica and are two different genres, or at least erotica is its own subgenre. In you get the physical. In erotica, you also get insight into the character's thoughts and emotions, even if it's only lust or excitement. For me, it's almost more real because it feels like actual people instead of just bodies, if that makes sense. I'm freaked out by today's 90s storyline. How I got a raise at work. My hot new neighbor stopped by. I love MILFs. Today, caught my stepsister sniffing my underwear. My dad's friend helped me stretch my hamstrings, proving to daddy that I really do love my new stepmom. I actually looked into this because I found it very strange that there was an insurgence of incest themed. What was discovered is most people don't care about the story so if it was a light taboo, viewers would just ignore it while you increase your audience to those who are interested in the taboo. The fetish is more towards inserting yourself into the family as opposed to imagining it is your family. Strangely, having a fetish for incest does not equate to having a fetish for committing incest to your own family. There was a very successful incest-themed series that started in the 80s called Taboo that featured hardcore incest that didn't step anything. It's always been a thing that some people are into. The more recent surge of incest has more to do with the production companies being cheap and lazy. They can throw a few lines of step something in there and change virtually nothing else about the scene they were going to shoot, and it gets some of the people who are into that. Other people just ignore it. Best of both worlds, and you didn't have to write any sort of coherent plot at all. Often, it makes no sense at all with stepmom, dad, daughter, and sonning one another. The reason why it's all step and not all-out incest is due to a change in how certain laws are enforced that scared the payment processors into mandating it, or they wouldn't process the transactions. If not for that, the step prefix would be gone too. Being an 18-year-old trying to limit it then quit it has become a crutch for pleasure. I don't like it as much as I used to. I find it damaging to my mental health too. I often see situations for what they aren't and see a chance to make a move when realistically I would be considered a creep. In fact, I hate now. But if you watch it, I don't care or hate you. A lot of people are lazy and expect everything to fall into their lap. When I was in the forces, a friend has a system. While the rest of us were filling our pockets with cash to buy drinks hoping to pick up women, he, a very average-looking guy, simply walked up to women and asked, "Anyone want to?" I thought he was crazy, but he'd get 20, maybe 30 no, but he'd always get one before the rest of us had purchased our third drink. He didn't care about looks, he just wanted what he wanted. Your idea of making a move when it would be seen as creepy is bang on. I was friends with a young lady while I was married. A bunch of us were going on a camping trip. She didn't bring a tent and asked if she could sleep in mine. She was gorgeous, but I was married, so I didn't see an issue. The idea of infidelity didn't even cross my mind. As we lay in the tent, she said, "If a guy tries to have with me, I can't say no. I just can't." In my mind, I took that to mean she can't say yes either. She was just okay with being used. I felt so bad for her. My friends thought I was a goof for not taking advantage of her, but even back then, I knew my biggest turn-on or kink was to be wanted. I love when women hit on me, when they initiate intimacy. Nothing is more exciting to me. It's alright until it's not. It's fine to watch to get off, but if it's something you have to watch to get off, then it becomes an issue. If you cancel plans because of it, then I suggest getting help. Like anything else, is bad when taken to excess. Much like how most people who drink won't become alcoholics, most people that look at won't become addicts, but a few will. Just about anything can become an addiction to someone. Some of it is hot, but a lot is so nasty. When you can't even imagine taking any pleasure from it, what's the point? Or is this what most people like? Banging away at some girl's mouth, gagging, being contorted into weird positions that does nothing for me. Why is there so little of people actually enjoying themselves? For me, it's fun to imagine throating my wife. The idea of actually doing it in real life is terrible because I would never want to hurt her, and that seems like an awful experience. For me, it's pretty easy to separate the fantasy from real life. My current boyfriend warped my view of. I never had an issue with it before, and a few times a year I would watch it myself. Now, the lying, the hiding, the amount of money spent, the comments, the constantly comparing my body to theirs, the fact that he can't get off without viewing it or talking about it while he is inside of me, pretending to have the fetish he prefers going on around us while he is inside of me. It's been a train wreck on my mental health. I also have a young son, and I worry about his exposure and him turning out to be like my boyfriend. I've never said that out loud. It scares the out of me, ethical or not, just like any drug, including those prescribed to you, or can be detrimental to your health on ways you can understand you till it's potentially too late. Be wary. I'm also really happy to finally see so many people coming out with their own stories. I don't think banning it is the answer. I think transparency and education are. I would never wish what I'm going through as the partner of an addict on anyone, but I can't imagine how much more difficult it is to be the addict. Normalized is very different than normal. My last relationship, I was with an addict. He was a recovered drug addict that assured me therapy got him through it, but I'm convinced that kind of dependency just transfers to something else because it was pretty bad how deep he was into. He would revolve his days around when he masturbated. Sometimes he would do it too much. He would get sores on his genitals from the chafing. He would subscribe to cam girls, even to ones we both knew in person, which I found to be most hurtful, and would go to bikini bars, hiding it. The death grip was real with him, so he would prefer masturbation over. I would find receipts and other things in his car that showed what he was indulging in on the low, after multiple times of us talking about how I felt about it. Icing on the cake was one day after he was accusing me randomly of talking to people behind his back. I got a gut urge to check his computer when he was in the shower. I saw he just signed up on an escort board and was messaging other girls on his social media to meet up. Also sent emails anonymously on back page places looking for. I genuinely think he didn't physically cheat, and it was mostly the hiding, adrenaline boost of the chase that was what he wanted, but still, it always made me feel so insecure about myself when he would prefer over and would revolve everything around cam girls or needing to see nudity in some form as often as he could. There's a lot more to this, but after breaking up with him and moving on to a new relationship, I didn't realize how much this situation stuck with me and the healing it took to not always question if your partner is actually attracted to you or not, or to just feel good about yourself again after always fighting against for your partner to be with you. I'm so grateful to be with someone who isn't like that and understands how important it is to have a genuine connection in reality and not have some warped Yule fog that warps the relationship. It is what it is. I could badmouth it, but that would be pretty hypocritical of me. I don't know if it's just Reddit, but man, this thread is kinda wild. I don't think it's that bad. Does no one else just crank one out like 3 to 4 times a week? I search up something that I'm in the mood for, enjoy the content, bust, go back to my day. I get that people have guilt and stuff attached to it, but damn, everyone in here is talking like Carrie Nation about alcohol. Personally, I find traditional to be overly contrived and fake, and so I prefer to read erotic stories instead. In my opinion, these stories feel much more genuine and believable, allowing me to truly lose myself in the experience. One thing that has always bothered me about pornography is the excessive focus on extreme acts, as well as the fact that many performers have exaggerated physical attributes, such as an oversized. As you pointed out, the average size for stars is significantly larger than that of the general population. As a result, I have amassed a large collection of graphic literature on my Kindle, which I tend to gravitate towards more than any other app on my phone. All in all, I think it's important for people to explore their own Yule preferences in a healthy and responsible manner, and to be aware of the potential effects of consuming pornography on one's own Yule behavior and attitudes. Trying to figure out a way to say this without being too wordy. I kinda don't get. I've seen a few. Sometimes it can be hot. I'm by no means a prude and I jerk off as much as anyone else. But my imagination has always been more than enough. In fact, lacks what my imagination has, which is sort of a great build-up, the masturbation equivalent of foreplay, or in some ways even the courtship and wooing that comes before that. So the main reason I don't watch and don't get is because just jumping straight to bumping uglies doesn't do it for me. I need Yule tension. I need build up. I need warm affection. By the time my mind goes to thrusting hips, I'm already a few seconds away from exploding. Is way too purely physical. Having so easily accessible has the potential to really warp a person's Yule expectations, especially young boys, and make them less satisfied with the reality of with a real partner who doesn't look or act like a star. It's proven to be a real problem that results in Yule dysfunction. I actually am trying to figure out how to talk with my teenage son about this so it doesn't have a chance to ruin his future relationships. I'm skeeved by not knowing if it's 100% consensual. Revenge, hidden cameras, drug-addicted performers, withheld pay you. Can't do it, and I'm getting old enough that seeing college-aged people in it just stresses me out. I don't care that it's legally allowed for an 18-years-old to be doing that. I know in my gut that it's ed up. This is part of why me and my partner started initially moving more toward animated, drawn, or entirely just written erotic content. As much as I support people who want to make that sort of content doing so, there's so much iffy stuff that gets mixed in it's hard to really know what's ethical and what isn't. It's far too easy for children to find on the internet. I have more than one 9-year-old student who knows where the "what are you doing, stepbro?" line comes from. Some things should be kept behind locked doors, but when you hand your child a phone with a data plan and they've got an hour-long bus ride, sometimes they find things that should be hidden. I find a lot of is a race to the bottom. To many actors and actresses trying to be the first to do something, usually something disgusting or shocking, before anyone else can. Years ago, anal was taboo. Now, you've got triple penetration anal. Who's going to be the first to go to quadruple or quintuple anal? And who would want to watch such a thing? I think I'd highly problematic due to the now emerging information about the high rate of abuse and even Yule slavery that's rampant in the industry. Is always a form of, whether for purposes of art or entertainment, either way it's still, when is not consensual, by definition it then become Yule assault. When you then introduce financial profit and gain into the equation directly off the back of people being forced to have, you then have exploitation. Given the similarities with human trafficking, it then becomes a very real possibility that the two may even be very closely linked with each other, and that's what makes it all incredibly disturbing and outright creepy. It is almost like a Yule entertainment version of the movie Hostel, where people are captured and physically tortured in unbelievably brutal, gruesome ways. The only thing that tones it down a little in the case of the P.0.RN industry is simply that people don't usually typically die. The only way for it to be ethical is if it's consensual and done by the participant actors with full enjoyment of how attractive they feel. And literally the only way that would happen in most, but maybe not all cases, is if it's a single, solo actor basically just masturbating in a really slow, titillating, long and drawn-out manner prior to finally climax intensely, or if it's a couple such as committed relationship partners or friends with benefits. Briefly, all things in moderation is fine. Watch and jack off, it's good for you. But young people need guidance about real world. Is an exaggerated, often extreme, depiction of what is like. Young people need to know that real isn't always like that every time. People need to be wary of foregoing their own real-world partners in favor of the quick release of and masturbation. It is all too easy to fall into a pattern of frequent masturbation and then not having the requisite libido to respond to your real-world partner in a normal, healthy way. Relationships can suffer. People also need to know that consent and proper foreplay are boring to watch, but are vital to a happy life. The consent thing is obvious. They never bother to go through the motions of flirting and gauging interest and communication and consent in because that would be boring to watch, but it's something that simply must happen. Also, foreplay isn't just 2 seconds of kissing then straight to blowjob. Proper foreplay starts hours or even days prior. Foreplay starts with loving caresses in the morning, playful pinching and stuff during the day, surprise kiss on the neck in the afternoon, holding hands walking through the parking lot, gentle kiss on the hand and saying I love you while shopping for groceries, etc. People don't have just because they got super horny at the same time at the same place and ignore each other all other times. Real partnership, real loving, real intimacy, real communication is an ongoing process. You should never stop showing affection when you feel it. When you have that kind of healthy intimacy and communication, you can feel pretty comfortable in asking something like, "Would you actually like it if I had your face like that?" My wife said yes, she actual kinda likes it sometimes. She likes the fact that she can choke on my, not in a punishing way, but in a my man has a big, and I'm doing this to make him feel good kind of way. If we didn't have a healthy intimacy, I don't think I ever would have even come close to finding that out. P.0.R. Watch, but pay attention to your partner. Talk and love each other physically at all times and you will have a healthier life. It just makes me tear myself apart. I have critically low self-esteem, and I can't watch really because I just compare myself and end up believing that I am human trash and that I'm not good enough for my boyfriend because I don't look like those girls even though he tells me otherwise. Even if I got fit, I would never look like a star, and even if I looked like a star, I suspect I'd still hate the way I look and have the same feelings. Isn't evil, it isn't good, it is just a thing, like everything else. I think like most things, is fine in moderation, but I also think that isn't healthy for most people. It sets unrealistic expectations, it is arguably an exploitative industry, and I think in some ways it tends to take away from people a natural response to intimacy. It isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does alter intimacy. In some ways, it could be a good thing, or meaningless, but I think it probably does more worse than good personally. I think it's an absolute joke though that the industry has tried to align itself to female empowerment and espouse itself as such. This is the best take. I view it like alcohol or cigarettes. If a person has an occasional drink or occasional cigarette, it's relatively harmless. It's not particularly praiseworthy, but it's relatively harmless. If a person is using those substances every day, lying to loved ones about when they are using, blowing a bunch of money to obtain more, hiding at work or at home to use, and generally centering most of their time and attitude around that thing that's not harmless anymore. The user below commenting to this post is deleting and rewriting the content of his posts. I've left my responses unaltered except editing to add contextual information. I was responding to that lab deleted from his posts. There's a real push by stars in the industry to get it regulated. Guarantee STD tests, safety standards, pay, etc. As it is now, I see it as a continuation of the world's oldest profession. Humans are Yule beings, and when we can't get released the normal way, well, I'm in favor of measures to make it safer and more equitable, but eliminating it entirely would be like draining the ocean with a cup. As fast as you remove it, someone will make new stuff. There's a larger discussion about how we lack connection and fill it with ever darker fantasies like some of the worst fetishes, but that's kinda not your question, and all we need to fix that is fix our economy, society, and internet culture, so yeah, well, get on that. I don't get a lot of "this is fun for me" vibes from the female actors in straight. Most of the time, the dynamic seems really power-oriented and misogynistic. But when I watch gay, it seems like everyone is usually having a pretty good time and super down to play their roles. Even in gay, when someone is getting degraded, the guy getting degraded usually loves it. Doesn't seem the same way in straight. Has been available forever. I think Playboy started in the 50s. Many years before that, they had little animated reels people would pay a nickel for to see naked ladies. The difference is nowadays it's literally a click away. We can see whatever we want, whenever we want, on whatever device we want. It can start to up the personal and Yule relationship with real people depending on how much of it you ingest. Everyone has different boundaries regarding this, and I accept that. For myself and my husband, we just watch it together. We don't watch it separately, and before someone comes for me with "he's likely sneaking it," I doubt it. Super active life, and I think it's because we try to include each other and are super open to one another. I've seen destroy so many marriages, cause ED and so much mistrust. It's just not something we are interested in, and if we feel like it, we watch it together. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think is a lot like food. We can have really unhealthy relationships with it. We can overconsume it. We can feel a lot of shame around it. It can be stolen or given freely. There are things that are better or worse for us to consume. But at the end of the day, there's nothing inherently bad for us about. It's mostly our relationship with it that determines if it's good or bad. In terms of the consumption of, I feel like it follows the same rules as any other vice. It's good in moderation and can have benefits to its consumption for couples and individuals, but in excess, it can be damaging to a person's Yule function, like the psychological condition creep. In terms of the selection of, similar to any business, it's always best to support the small creators over the big conglomerates. Look for independent creators who manage their own content and set their own boundaries, and support them without making them feel bad if they decide to shut it all down after a while. That way you can be certain yours is ethically produced and actually benefits someone who can use the extra income. It's a vice that will be more trouble than it's worth to get rid of. I assume every single person uses it to some extent, and I don't shame them for it. What worries me is that a growing number of people are encouraging girls to perform in as a form of feminism, Yule discovery, or a way to get cash fast. It is a risky industry that most people, both men and women, should avoid participating in. I'm still thinking about the time I was offered to lose my virginity shooting one. It has saturated society, and it's trending as an absolutely acceptable form of entertainment and occupation, like watching your favorite TV series or reading the paper or being part of the local theater group. It has basically displaced other activities that had some meaning for people and provided socialization some useful S's. Particularly it has objectified humans next level, and we are all desensitized to this. People are having less than ever, and I believe the biggest problem is the availability and ease of access at any age. It's all fun and games until reality hits and we take a look at the age of people in the industry and the consumers. I get that it isn't for everyone and that it upsets a lot of people. To each their own. I'm completely turned off by anything that seems exploitative or faked, bodies that seem a little too perfect, over-the-top acting, etc. It's what most people think of about, but there is a whole world of actually positive stuff too. There are real couples making their own content, doing what they genuinely choose to do for pleasure. It's easy to tell when the chemistry is there. They are usually smiling and laughing, genuinely enjoying each other. There are intimate massage videos that include instructions on applying the same techniques with your partner. Some doesn't involve at all, such as artful nude photo sets. It's sometimes nice to simply admire the beauty and variety of the human bodies we inhabit without shame or judgment. Our biology is a marvel and should be celebrated. So no, not everything is bad. Enjoy the good stuff and everything in moderation. It is okay to like seeing other people being intimate and happy.